Hello everybody, welcome to the sound test room. We're going to take a look at Super Manetron, which is a Mellotron M400 series emulation. It's the best Mellotron emulation ever, and that's without a shadow of a doubt. It's practically exactly the same as the original machine. The original machine came out, the Mellotronix company started about the end of 1963, but it wasn't until 1967 that it really took off with popular music. We used to hear things like and at the beginning of Strawberry Fields, I think that's what made it really famous, when Paul McCartney played the little fluty intro on it. Everybody used it. The Beatles, Moody Blues, Jean-Michel Jarre, Genesis, Rick Wakeman, Manfred Mann, stacks of famous songs. Played all the strings in Space Oddity by David Bowie, played by Rick Wakeman. Also, how it worked was it has about 70 tapes and about 70 playheads, and what would happen is, I don't know if you can see here, when you press the key, it would unhook the thing, and it was spring loaded, so it would run across the tape head like this, and when it would get to its 8-second loop, it'd just stop and spring back down. This emulation, the developer who did this emulation has spent a lot of time. These are from, I think, his Mellotron, and he sampled it exactly the same. You can see the original, the M400, it had 3 sounds. You could load up more sounds, but you had to buy them. So you could have like choir sound, or a really famous flute sound, and then strings. But you could also mix between B and A, or C and B, so you could get and also you had like a pitch, which would happen if you left it in the sun at a gig. All the tapes would stretch. On this version, we can swing over. We have some reverb, which is quite nice. And we also have mechanical sounds. Now, this would always happen with the original Mellotrons, and that would be because instead of it having strings like a piano and a hammer, instead of the strings, it would be a tape loop, and the hammer was replaced by a playhead, and they were spring loaded, so once they reached the end of the loop, it would release the spring and spring back down, so you get that type of effect. You can control the volume of that, or you don't have to have it at all, but it's quite nice if you want to do something really retro and original, and have it as exactly as it was. This one gives you the choice of frame 1 or frame 2. All it means is that frame 1 you can load 3 sounds, frame 2 you can load 3 different sounds. And here you can select between a flute, strings, cello, oboe, 8-voice choir, vibes, or brass. So say for instance in frame 2 I had flute, vibes and brass, or we could put oboe, vibes and brass, and we can have a listen to that by going back there, and now you might think at the moment the sounds are awful. They're awful. There's no escaping the fact that these are terrible sounds. But it was like the first sampler, the very first sampler. And there was about 2,500 of these things made, original ones, and it cost, in 1960, I think in mid to late 60s, it just set you back £1,000, so it was a lot of money. But everybody used them and they loved them. In a sec, I've done a little track which I'm going to play for you, which uses mainly this and shows you how good it can actually sound. It was brilliant for progressive rock, and I had this little this little chord. See, I've still got the mechanical sounds. Also, this little on-off button here it won't affect your playing, but what it will do is it will put in all the old mechanical noises that you got with a Mellotron. So, and that's honestly, that's what the thing sounded like. I used them in some studios in the late 70s and early 80s. It still had them, or still used them before samplers took over, sort of thing. And this is the kind of noise you'd get. So, and of course, if you couple that with the spring sound, now you might say, oh, that's unusable, completely unusable, but there was so much other stuff and so much layering going on back in the day, and of course the quality wasn't great, that noise kind of got lost. Because you can use a limiter and noise gates and stuff as well, but now with this we can just switch that off, and we can also just turn down mechanical noise and have the actual preset noise. This gives you a really retro feel. I've got this MIDI'd up, by the way, to a Roland GW8, so that's, I mean, oh, it's another nice thing as well. Of course, you can use core MIDI. Has a tone control, which sort of it's a nice setup out there. The pitch you can't change. It's kind of like a pitch wheel, you know, like on a synth. Which is, if you've taken this to a gig and left it in the sun, when you come to play it, the good chances are that the tapes had got warm and they'd stretched a bit. And when the playhead hit them, you get this kind of effect, you know. Which is one of the reasons people liked them. People get all nostalgic, you know, but working with them back in the day was really difficult. Anyway, so that's a look at some of the sounds, which are fab. But the good thing is that when you couple these together, and I've done this like sort of progressive-y kind of 1970s feel, kind of, you know, your type of Genesis-y type rock thing, and I don't know how loud this is going to be, so we'll just see. Well, how I constructed this, I'll tell you as well. I used a drum loop from Drum Loops HD, and then 1, 2, 3, 4 Manetron tracks, so the Mellotron emulation tracks. Then I used an iMini for kind of your Taurus bass pedal effect, which people used to use to thicken the sound up then, and then an organ, and then a couple of drum fills. So we'll just take a quick listen to this without the iMini and without Galileo, just with the drums and the Manetron. Okay, so that's the kind of thing that happens, and it all sounded a little bit weak and weedy, so obviously they use real bass guitars and stuff over the top of it. But when the Mini Moog came out, and then a bit later on when Moog released the Taurus pedals, people started, particularly Genesis, would back up the Mellotron choir with like Taurus bass pedals, and it would sound really rich. So you kind of get this effect. I'll put in the Galileo and the iMini, so you get this kind of nice bass come in behind, which thickens the whole sound up. and I think that sounds much nicer. I don't know if you noticed, but although the sounds sound a bit crummy and not very good quality on their own, when you mix them in with a track, they start to sound really cool, and you get that real nice retro feel it used to get from the late 60s and early 70s. It sounds quite nice. Of course, Oasis used it on Wonderwall, so that brought it back into vogue. Yeah, all in all, it's really it's a great app, and it's a great simulation. And if you're old enough to remember what it was like to use these, and when you used to hear records by Yes and the Moody Blues and stuff, and you think, oh, what a great sound, you know. A lot of these tracks used Mellotron to give them like a real rich orchestral feel. Anyway, so that was my review of this fantastic and truly wondrous emulation of a Mellotron M400 series. Fantastic.